Costa Luminosa was supposed to be my family's dream vacation, a 14-day transatlantic cruise from Southampton to New York. Jenny, my wife, she'd spent months planning it, our 20th anniversary gift to ourselves. Now I sit here, 3 months later, as the only survivor of all 2,826 passengers and crew, trying to make sense of what happened in those dark waters. I need a drink to tell this story. The investigators, they don't believe me. They blame it on a rogue wave, a structural failure. But I was there. I saw it. And the thing that took down our ship, it wasn't natural. Let me start from the beginning. Not just from when it attacked, but from the first warning signs we all ignored. Because there were signs. God, there were so many signs. The cruise started normally enough. July 12th, 2024. Southampton was having one of its rare perfect summer days. I remember Jenny taking photos of everything. The terminal, the gangway, even the safety certificates posted by our cabin door. Sophie, our 15-year-old, was already plotting which activities she'd do first. The first 3 days were paradise. Formal dinners, dance classes, morning yoga on the deck. Jenny and I even renewed our vows in the ship's chapel. Sophie recorded it on her phone. That video is somewhere at the bottom of the Atlantic now. The crew seemed different by day 4. Nothing obvious at first, just little things. The way they'd stop talking when passengers walked by, how they kept checking the weather radar, even though the skies were clear. I overheard one officer speaking in Italian to another, something about anomalous readings. Then came day 5. We were somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic, about halfway through our journey. The weather had been perfect, calm seas, clear skies. That evening, Jenny and I were having dinner at the Panorama restaurant on Deck 9. Our daughter, Sophie, was at the teen club. She'd made friends with a girl from Manchester named Emma. The first sign something was wrong came during dessert. A vibration. Not the normal engine rumble we'd gotten used to, but something different. Like the whole ship was shuddering. Our wine glasses started walking across the table. Captain Rossi came on the PA system, telling us not to be alarmed, that we were experiencing some minor mechanical issues. But I saw the look on our waiter's face. These weren't minor issues. I went to fetch Sophie from the teen club while Jenny returned to our cabin. That's when I first heard it. A sound that didn't belong on a cruise ship. A deep, resonant moan that seemed to come from beneath the waves. Like whale song, but wrong. Distorted. The kind of sound that makes your bones ache. The ship's stabilizers were working overtime. I could feel the engine straining. By the time I got Sophie back to our cabin, the crew had started quietly directing people away from the lower decks. They said it was just a precaution, but I saw them sealing the watertight doors. Jenny was already in our cabin, watching the waves through our balcony window. "Richard," she said, "something's following us." I thought she was being paranoid until I saw it myself. A shadow, massive and fluid, moving beneath the surface. Not like a whale or a school of fish. This thing, it moved with purpose. The next few hours were tense. The ship's engineers were running diagnostics, but every system showed green. Normal operations, they said. But there was nothing normal about the way our navigation equipment was behaving. The GPS kept jumping, showing us hundreds of miles from our actual position. Compass readings went haywire. I know this because I made friends with one of the junior officers, Marcus, earlier in the cruise. He told me later, much later, just before the end, that they'd lost all sonar contact with anything below 100 meters. It was like the ocean beneath us had just disappeared. Around 10 p.m., they canceled all outdoor activities. Said it was due to unexpected weather, though the sky was still clear. They closed the pools, the jogging track, even the smoking areas. They wanted everyone inside. Found out later that 3 crew members had reported seeing something on the port side, something that breached the surface for just a second. Their descriptions didn't match any known marine animal. One of them quit on the spot, locked himself in his cabin. Around midnight, the power flickered. The ship's horns started blaring, not the usual signal blasts, but sustained, urgent warnings. Sophie was scared. I told her to put on her life jacket just in case. An adventure, I called it, trying to keep my voice steady. That's when we felt the first impact. The ship lurched hard to port. Alarms started screaming through every speaker. In the corridor, people were running, shouting. A crew member was trying to organize passengers, but I could see the fear in his eyes. Through our window, we watched as something massive breached the surface about 50 yards out. In the darkness, all I could make out was texture, a skin that wasn't scales, wasn't flesh, but something in between, and bioluminescent patches that pulsed with a sickly green light. The second impact hit directly beneath us. The floor buckled. Seawater started pouring in through the seams where the balcony door met the frame. I grabbed Sophie. Jenny grabbed our emergency bag, and we joined the crowd rushing toward the muster stations. The scene in the corridors. I still see it in my nightmares. Families separated by panicked crowds. Elderly passengers unable to move fast enough. Children crying for parents they'd lost in the chaos. We made it up 3 decks before the lights went out completely. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in a red glow that made the water shimmer like blood. That's when the temperature dropped. Not just from the water flooding in, but something else, the kind of cold that reaches into your bones. We never made it to the muster station. Something wrapped around the ship. Not tentacles, not exactly. More like living cables, translucent but strong enough to crush through the hull like it was tin foil. They were everywhere, punching through decks, wrapping around pillars, dragging the bow down into the water. I lost my grip on Sophie's hand in the chaos. Jenny went after her. I tried to follow, but a surge of water knocked me over the railing. The last thing I saw before hitting the water was those bioluminescent patches spreading up the side of the ship like a web of 6 stars. The water was freezing, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the silence under the surface. That impossible silence, broken only by the sound of twisting metal and something else. Something that sounded almost like singing, but at frequencies that made my skull vibrate. I was in the water for 6 hours before the Portuguese Coast Guard found me. 6 hours of watching that thing tear apart a 92,000-ton cruise ship like a child dismantling a toy. The screams, they eventually stopped. The ship went down in pieces, dragged apart rather than sinking whole. When they pulled me out, I was babbling about lights and tentacles. They sedated me, said I was hypothermic, delirious. But I know what I saw. In those last moments before the ship went down completely, something rose from the depths, something vast. The cruise line's official statement called it a tragic accident. They found no other survivors, no bodies either. The wreckage they recovered. The metal was warped in ways that naval engineers say is impossible. The black boxes were crushed, their data corrupted by what they're calling unknown electromagnetic interference. I've spent months researching deep-sea anomalies, trying to make sense of what I saw. There are reports, going back centuries, of ships disappearing in that same stretch of the Atlantic. Most blame the weather or human error. But some accounts, they mention sounds, lights under the water, strange disturbances in ship instruments. Last week, I received an email from someone claiming to be a marine biologist, Dr. Sarah Chen from Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. She said there's a team studying unusual seismic activity in the area where we went down. Apparently, they've detected something moving through deep-sea trenches, something big, and it's getting closer to shipping lanes. She sent me some data, sonar readings, thermal imaging, gravitational anomalies. None of it makes sense according to known marine biology. But what really caught my attention were the spectrograms of underwater sounds recorded in the area. They match what I heard that night, that impossible whale song. Hold on, I have to go. They're calling another meeting about the official investigation. But before I do, let me say this. If you're planning a cruise, check the route. And if it passes through the mid-Atlantic, specifically around 41 degrees north, 45 degrees west, choose another vacation. Because that thing that took my family, it's still out there. And I don't think it's finished. Oh, and one more thing. About those bioluminescent patches. In my nightmares, I finally realized what they remind me of. They're not just lights, they're eyes, hundreds of them. And in every dream, they're watching me, waiting. You know what the worst part is? Last night, I got another email from Dr. Chen. Just 2 lines. We lost contact with our research vessel. Last known position, 41 degrees north, 45 degrees west.